So we're now standing where I first landed at Findhorn in 1967. Looks very different today. It's a very barren area, and I met two gentlemen who were smashing concrete and stones. One of them was Peter Caddy, the other was my friend Dennis from the university days, and I was quickly handed a sledgehammer to join them in this process of smashing stones. And I learnt that they were building the foundations for a bungalow that was going to be used by a lady called Joni, who was due at Easter that year. During the afternoon there was a stop for tea break, during which time I met two ladies. One of them was Eileen, another Dorothy, and three young boys. Yeah, there was a very special connection that occurred. I remember before I left that afternoon, Peter gave me a copy of what he called Eileen's guidance that she'd received that morning, which was very meaningful to me when I read it when I got back to our workplace. So at Easter 1967, this bungalow arrived on the back of two trailers from Hull in East Yorkshire, from Willoughby's, and it had to be joined together, an annex built onto it, and first resident was called Joni, and it seemed like Buckingham Palace compared to the wee caravan that the Caddies were living in its spaciousness and its newness, and it became very much the sort of centre point. This is where meals were often taken, because there wasn't room in the original caravan for more than the Caddy family. To me it was quite remarkable that 6 people lived in this small abode for 7 years, and on a personality level there were challenges, but they got along well, and that was the humble beginnings of what was to follow. It was a happy time, even though conditions were cramped. Peter started a wee garden to feed the family because he had a very small income, and this garden has grown and grown and grown and produced some wonderful organic food over the years. Inside the caravan there's a main room at the far end, which was a lounge, and where a tiny stove that Eileen used to use to heat the caravan and the water. And Peter and Eileen's bed had to fold down at night and then fold up in the daytime. There was not really an oven, there were just 2 gas burners, and there was a tiny bath alongside the middle part of the caravan. There was no flush toilet, we just had to use a bucket which Peter would empty on the compost heap, which was close by, in the morning. And it's wonderful that the caravan is still here today. It must be well over 75 years old. So we're now in the central area. This was developed in the 60s, just expanding from the original caravan area, the original garden. And it was rather significant that once it was completed, we put a beech hedge around the area, a bit like an oasis, and there was powerful energy that was created in that area, and it's remained ever since. What's happened over the years is that the growth has just been phenomenal. We now have trees that are in maturity, there's green everywhere, birds are singing, whereas 50 years ago this was just dead. No trees, no birds. The second bungalow that was erected, there was another lady who lived down in the south of England who'd had a vision to live in a community in Scotland, and her son was actually the Bishop of Norwich at the time, so it was quite a change. She moved up here in the autumn of 1967, by which time this bungalow was created, and She did a lot of meditating, she did a lot of healing work through her meditation, and one of the great treats was to be invited for tea with Evelyn. There was a couple called Pete and Eve Godfrey who were living close to a colour healing centre in Cornwall, and they visited Findhorn and decided they wanted to live here. I think Pete had worked in the army, he had many practical skills. Eve was a wonderful gardener. She spent much of her time on her knees weeding. Yeah, I got on very well with Peter. He trusted me and gave me a lot of freedom. I remember an incident when we were working on these paths around the central area, and at the time I was repairing a beehive that needed attention. Dorothy was looking after the bees, and he said, "No, that's not priority, this is priority. Let's get guidance on it." And Eileen's guidance was that Peter will know. So the beehive was shelved for the evening, and the paths around here were worked on. Bungalow number 4 was first bought by a lady from Scotland called Betty Macpherson, and she was a healer and a very supportive person to the foundation. In fact, it was she who encouraged Peter to start the community centre in 1969. But what was so amazing was that when she moved in here, she discovered her neighbours, the Ross Stewarts, and she had been neighbours many years before in Hertfordshire in the south of England, and neither at that time knew the other had an interest in spiritual matters. So there was this reconnection, which I thought was beautiful. The second occupation was by a couple, Mary and John Hilton, so for some time this became known as the Hilton. By this time Eileen's vision was of 7 cedarwood bungalows, and this one, which we call Ross Stewart, was erected early in 1968, and Ross was a retired naval captain. He had a great love of dowsing. Ross was one of the first trustees of Findhorn and made many major contributions. This was the last of the 7 to be completed in July 1968, and it was bought by 2 people, Monica Parrish and Anthony Brooke, and they each had big networks. They'd been connected to the Universal Link. Anthony's background was he'd been the last white ruler of Sarawak, and as a result he had many contacts around the world, and he was a wonderful ambassador for Findhorn. Many guests came in later years after hearing him talk about Findhorn. He carried slides in those days, we didn't have PowerPoints. He was so enthusiastic. I remember he used the word hallelujah at the end of every sentence, and this was his sort of trademark. Monica is still with us. She visited earlier this year, and it was lovely to have her back. She's well in her 90s now. The only consistent thing I've experienced at Findhorn is change and growth, and it's just been miraculous to see how this has developed on all levels, both personally and outwardly. The life pattern in the early days was very simple. It was mostly on the end of a spade. It was physical. Gradually, a wider range of artistic developments, such as the craft studios and dramatic opportunities rose. But that wasn't on the agenda in the very early days. It was just creating the foundations. The Findhorn Foundation has offered hope to many. It's demonstrated that any situation, good can be found in it. It's given an opportunity for thousands of people to come and discover more about themselves and the richness of working in groups with one another in a synergetic manner. been an educational centre, particularly from the early 70s, when, in addition to growing plants, the cooperation of the unseen beings, it was the time to start growing people. This was what David Spangler initiated.